Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving right into a deeply personal slice of history. Today, we're unpacking a story that absolutely captures the mood of 1943. It's all about how everyday families navigated this intense intersection of new beginnings, wartime uncertainty, and generational legacy. We're going to look closely at the tiny details of one family's Christmas to understand a much, much larger historical reality. Now, there's this haunting, beautiful request from a dying grandmother that really anchors our journey today. It prompts us to ask, how did ordinary people keep the lights on during the darkest, most uncertain years of World War II? Well, today, we're going to piece together that quiet resilience of the home front.
Section 1. A quiet Christmas morning. All right, picture this scene with me. It's the quiet, dark, right before sunrise. Fred is sitting in his kitchen holding his 2-month-old newborn son, Randy. The Christmas tree lights are reflecting in the window glass. Now, 1943 was a year completely defined by waiting. Fred is sitting there reflecting on the past 12 months, working at Roar Aircraft Manufacturing, deeply worried about the war, and just waiting for a future to come into focus. And he looks down at his son, literally holding a fragile piece of that future right there in his arms.
And that profound sense of care, it extended right into the holiday itself. Fred actually wrapped his gifts with what our source describes as engineer precision, perfectly folding every single edge. And look at this inscription, for Betty who reads the real things. He wrote that inside a book of poetry he gifted her. It just perfectly captures the deliberate, thoughtful care Fred poured into this specific Christmas. He really recognized who his wife truly was.
So, let's look at this thoughtful exchange of gifts. We've got a burgundy dress, a new coat, perfume for Betty, a tailored suit, and a framed photograph for Fred. As she unwrapped these, Betty actually had to work hard to keep her face simply appreciative rather than getting totally overwhelmed. She realized he hadn't just grabbed random things off a shelf. No, he had spoken to store clerks. He had carefully planned it all out. These gifts were a tangible anchor of normalcy in a completely abnormal time. Then we have Randy's very first Christmas. Check out this list of simple, beautiful toys. Noah's Ark figures, a hand-knit cap, soft primary color blocks, and a gently turning red, yellow, and blue wooden mobile. That mobile, which totally caught Randy's deep, observant attention as it turned in the drafty air, it perfectly represents this fragile new life Fred and Betty are trying so desperately to nurture and protect against the terrifying backdrop of a global conflict. The morning culminates in this incredibly simple but powerful moment. Fred unwraps a framed photograph from Betty, turns it over, and reads what she wrote on the back. He just looks at her and utters a single word, Betty. Just a simple spoken name, but in that exact moment, it's literally all he needs to say to convey everything he feels. No other words needed. It is a total masterclass in unspoken affection. Section 2. The Shadow of War. As afternoon hits, we zoom out to the extended family gathering at Fern Street. And as soon as they arrive at the grandparents' house, we clearly see this stark juxtaposition of life and decline. On one hand, you have this sensory joy of the holiday, the festive kitchen smelling of roasting chicken and spiced apples simmering on the stove. But just down the hall, you have the muted, careful quiet of Grandmother Della's sick room. Voices are lowered, movements are extra careful. The reality of illness and time passing is just undeniable, running right alongside the celebration. And hanging over that dinner table is an even larger shadow, the World War II draft. Now, while Fred is currently deferred because of his critical job supporting aircraft manufacturing at Roar, everyone at the table knows nothing is permanent. That temporary nature of his safety just hangs heavily over the family dinner. It's this unspoken dread that everyone is thinking about, but they're all trying their hardest to ignore it for the sake of the holiday. But Betty's father, Lyle, finally breaks that tension. During a quiet conversation at the end of the table, well away from the women, he brings that unspoken dread right out into the open. He looks right at Fred and says, if it happens, Betty and Randy could come here. He's offering a vital safety net. He's promising that Betty wouldn't be left all alone in her house with a newborn if Fred ends up getting sent overseas. This pragmatic offer is a massive breakthrough. You see, Fred isn't a man who easily admits fear. But Lyle's words finally bring Fred's darkest anxieties about his family's survival out into the open. Fred admits he thinks about it every single week. Lyle reassures him with these exact words. She'll be taken care of. Randy will be taken care of. That's not nothing. And this brilliantly illustrates what love actually looked like for families in 1943. We're calling it practical love because it wasn't just poetry and perfume, right? It was love organized for practical use against immense, uncontrollable external threats. It was knowing that if the absolute worst happened, your family had physical shelter and support. Fred realizes this is literally the greatest Christmas gift Lyle could possibly give him, pure peace of mind.
Section 3. A Promise to Remember. After dinner, Betty walks across the block to visit her grandmother Della in the warm, dim quiet of her bedroom. Betty comes into the sick room carrying this heavy guilt for not visiting enough lately. But before she can even fully apologize, Della stops her. She says, "You have a new baby. You're right where you should be." With just those simple, profound words from the bed, Della immediately absolves Betty of all that guilt. She completely understands the different seasons of life. Della then goes on to map out Betty's life with absolute crystal clarity. She remembers Betty at age 2, efficiently marching straight to the kitchen to find cookies. She remembers her at age 7, seriously stringing beans for an entire afternoon. And now, in 1943, she sees her fully in the era of motherhood. Della proves that even though her body is failing, her sharp memory is the one vital tool she still fully possesses. Reflecting on that timeline, Della shares this absolutely beautiful realization. She became exactly what she was meant to be. And wow, this completely validates Betty's entire journey. From a little girl hunting for cookies in the kitchen to a strong, capable mother holding her family together during wartime, Della sees the complete, successful arc of Betty's life. Then, Della makes a shift. She asks for a promise. She makes her final, incredibly poignant plea to not just be remembered in the sad, dim, sick-room state. She wants to be remembered the whole way back, for a full life, for the early years, for a time when her husband Austin was young and foolish. She wants the entirety of their existence validated, not just its fading end. And to really ensure this happens, she gives Betty a very specific mission regarding baby Randy. She says, "Tell him his great-grandmother Della held him and called him a fine boy. Tell him we were here." By asking Betty to pass this memory directly to the newborn, Della ensures their family legacy is going to leapfrog right over the current war and survive long past the uncertainties of the era. It's this powerful, defiant claim against time itself. The scene closes with Betty stepping out of the sick room alone. The source material describes her placing her hand flat against the hallway wall, literally physically absorbing the profound weight of this generational promise. As she stands there, listening to the low rumble of her grandfather's voice through the wall, the pact is completely sealed. "We were here," Della had said. "I'll tell him," Betty had promised. You know, history isn't just about battles and treaties. It's about quiet resilience, practical love, and the promises we make to each other. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question. How are you preserving your own family's history the whole way back? How will you document your family's quiet moments of love? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.